This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Angie Colee for the first time. And thank you for being a guest on the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you. How could I not be a guest? Phantom Electric Ghost. Talk about a badass name.
Well, thank you. And before we start, you'll probably see that little icon up there that says Listen on Newsly. We are a featured podcast on a Newsly platform. If you use coupon code GHOST to get 1 month free premium subscription, that's an audio only podcast platform. Again, we are featured. This podcast episode will be there later tonight. Now, the topic that we're going to get into is permission to kick ass, making big moves and leading your life on your own terms. So that's going to be the focus today. And then I think I've got your website. And for those who are audio only, we have permissiontokickass.com. And so if people click on that, what would they find?
They'll just go to my website where I share everything about my journey. I teach entrepreneurs how to improve their leadership skills and communication skills. Doesn't sound all of that sexy, but I promise it's really, really awesome stuff. So permissiontokickass.com, that's where you'll find me.
Well, that's great. So let's get started with your topic of making big moves and leading your life on your own terms. So you're an author, a business owner, and an entrepreneur. Like maybe I don't know which one you want to start with first because you're all three. But let me know. Just kind of start it.
Well, I mean, they all kind of overlap a little bit. I mean, the book I've been working on for the past 5 years. So talk about a labor of love. I now know why they talk about a book being the ultimate authority when you're trying to build a business. Yeah, because nobody does them because they're super, super hard. Like managing the process when you're self-publishing or even when you're working with a publisher, it's just a lot. It's a lot. Just writing the book itself is a lot, let alone launching the thing. So the book came about because when I started my business, I always just, I don't know if I got it from society at large or if it was just the place and the time that I grew up in, but I got this message about business that it looks a certain way. And that way it does not look like me. It does not sound like me with my piercings. I got my tattoos covered up tonight, but like me is not good enough was basically the message that I got. So I always tried to fit in, very buttoned down, very quiet, not rock the boat kind of person. And I went to my first business conference probably like 6 or 7 years. And my background is in marketing as a copywriter. So we're the people that write the advertisements and the email promos and the jingles that you hear on the air and stuff like that. So I go to this business conference and I got a drink in me, got a little loosey-goosey with some colleagues. And we wound up telling stories about having mosh pit fights in our 20s. I'm a little bit of a rocker persona, but that was not something I had ever shared with business colleagues because, again, unprofessional, wrong, bad. Nobody will like me. Nobody will want to work with me. That was the first time in my life I literally saw people go, wait, who is this person? Tell me more. They leaned in physically. And I went, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so that story that yeah, my brain was immediately going, why did you say that story? That was dumb. Don't do that. But I saw them lean in and went, okay, maybe that was all right. Maybe that was all right. Okay. There's something to this being yourself piece of it.
Authentic you. I mean, what I find, with musicians, I'm a musician producer. And one of the things we find is like a lot of musicians will try to clone whatever is hot. Right. And so they think that that's what's going to work. But then they come to me and I'm like, I want you to show me the one song that you don't think I'm going to like. The song that is like that you're scared to show anybody.
That is an interesting approach.
It's the more authentic version of who they are. Instead of them trying to be Taylor Swift or trying to be whatever's hot, it's who they actually are. And I'd rather work with that because that's something that will make them unique and we can just make them sound better. So that's my approach. And I think it works in life that way because a lot of people spend their time trying to clone other people. Like, well, you're never going to be Jimi Hendrix. You're never going to be Jimmy Page. You're never going to get to that. That's who they are. That's who they are. Like you need to focus on getting people to know who you are.
Yes. Amen to that. I mean, I had a blues band when I lived in San Francisco. And so I travel full time now. So it's much harder to find a place to sing and perform that's not just, karaoke. And I can't go to karaoke nights either because I get called a ringer since I'm a vocalist. Boo. But when I had my blues band, I mean, for years, I would not listen to recordings of myself. I would not watch performances of myself. I loved singing. The crowd loved it. I can admit that I'm a good singer. Am I one of the best? Meh, I don't know, but I'm pretty damn good. And I'm
Mhm.
up there having fun, but I won't listen to myself. And I realized after the fact, it was when I was in my head, like putting on a performance, and I was thinking about everything as I was doing it. And it just made me look like stilted and slightly delayed and self-conscious, and I could pick up on that energy. But then there were times where I was able to just like let go and connect to the music and be out of my head and in the music fully. And when I saw a couple of those performances of myself, I went, oh, there she is.
That's the flow.
That
That's
one,
the flow
that
state.
one.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
when you're in that flow, that stream of consciousness, like you get into the groove. If you're a funk
Yes.
band, like if you're a jazz band, it's like we don't have to say anything. Like we just nod each other's heads, like you got it.
Oh
And
yeah.
then you got a guy comes in and they're asking what the chords are, you're like, you don't got it.
Mm-hmm. Don't got it.
You
Don't
know,
got it.
because they kind of like you get to the state where you just feel it and you let
Mm-hmm.
it go. You let it go through you because you got to get a certain level of confidence. And I think this applies to
Mm-hmm.
anything. A lot of people are experts, but then they have so much self-doubt and they've been doing something they should really believe in it. But then they start letting all these negative things come in and
Mm-hmm.
self-sabotage and all this limiting beliefs. And if you really want to do well, it's like you got to trust yourself. You got to trust what
Yes.
you can do and get into that flow state, get into that stream of consciousness, and it will be okay. You don't worry about it because you really do have it. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people they sabotage because they think, oh, I don't have it. Like,
Oh
well, you do.
yeah. Well, and what you said was so perfect too. Like you got to trust yourself. And I would encourage you to take it even a step further and trust the audience. Trust
Hmm.
the spectators. Know that I love synchronicity, and this has been coming up so often in the conversations I've been having lately, but you're making the art. You're not dictating the experience.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
get to define their own experience. Your job is to make the art. So if you can just trust them to have their own experience and the right people are going to love it, like my mosh pit story, uh, the right
Hmm.
people are going to love it. And for some people, it's not going to be for them, but the people that love you are really going to love you. And that's going to be so real and so valuable. Like, it's vulnerable too,
Yeah,
right? Just opening yourself
yeah.
up and putting yourself out there for, potential judgment. But I don't know. They talk about that thick skin thing and not caring what people think. I find it's pretty hard for me to not care what people think, but I've developed a filter where it's like,
Mm.
do I know you? Are you paying bills? Are you a good friend? Are you doing what I'm trying to do? Do you have some critical things about me? Okay, I don't care.
Well, it's like the hater, and then there's the critic that actually helps you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to this story where like Pete Townsend was talking about his idea for Tommy. And he was talking to
Mm-hmm.
these guys just before Tommy came out with his big rock opera. He kind of was pitching it to this guy at Rolling Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the kind of like, he's very a sensitive guy for a rock star. He's a very Pete Townsend. And he was pitching these ideas and was kind of wondering, like, was this thing totally blown out of, is it even going to make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then he pitched the idea of the pinball wizard. And he kind of did it kind of off the cuff. And
Yeah.
so if I have this pinball wizard in the story, is that going to make it? Are you going to give it a 5 star? And the guy said, yeah, that will give it a 5 star. But he was like, he wanted to, and he was hearing people telling him that Tommy was missing something.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came up with the pinball wizard. And
Love
then he was
it.
still kind of fearful, like, is this really going to work? And so he was looking for some kind of input. But like that shows you a guy like that, he's like a lead guitar player of the big rock band in the 70s, The Who, was
Mm-hmm.
a very vulnerable guy that was very much you could totally like, wreck him by like saying you didn't like something. He was very took
Yeah.
it personal, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, got to understand, that level of like, yeah, it is if you're an author or you're an entrepreneur, it is your idea. And if
Mm-hmm.
people dash it, you will be like, oh, but you
Yeah.
got to have, take the good with the bad. If somebody's just a hater,
Yeah.
that's not going to help you, but if somebody actually gives you constructive criticism, say, yeah, that could work. That's
Yeah.
useful,
And you
if they tell you to tweak it here and there, what's wrong with that?
you get to feel the feelings too. Like I feel especially like in the last 10 years or so there's been this gigantic push toward toxic positivity, if you've heard that buzzword. The idea that like everything's fine, and if I experience some unpleasant feelings, just like whatever, push them down, push them away, and get back to I am determined to feel happy. And basically all you're doing is putting it into a pressure cooker that is eventually just going to blow its stack. Like, you can't be happy all the time. And that doesn't mean that I think you have to be miserable all the time, but like, it's okay for some random internet stranger to say something about your work and for that to sting a little bit. Feel what you need to feel. Go cry in the shower if you need to do. My favorite way to blow off steam is to hop in the car and go for a long drive and like scream, sing at the top of my lungs. That's how I process a lot of things. Usually with angry music, sometimes with sad music, sometimes with happy music, depending on the mood. But usually by the time I've driven a couple miles and I have screamed my full head off, I come back, cool. The sting of that is over. I'm ready to let that go and move on to the next thing. It's not going to stop me, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think like the failure is how you learn. Like a lot of times when you think about a musician, like we'll have hundreds of songs that nobody ever heard. And you could look at that as being a failure, or you could look at it as being the rungs on the ladder to get where you need to go. And it's really like the way you look at it, because like, you know, there's like a lot of times, you know, engineering, how many different variations of something are they going to build and then it doesn't work, right? It happens all the time. Look at the moon shot, you know, how many versions of the, you know, of those Apollo rockets did they have to make before they actually work? So each failure isn't the end of the world. It teaches you what you need to know to get to the next one, the one that actually will get you to the moon, you know?
I love that. What if your failure is a prototype? One of many.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. People, you can't be scared of it because, you know, if you're a creative person, you're probably going to make errors on the way to where you want to go. And it's like, you got to make sure you don't give up just because you don't hit it at 100%.
Oh, yes.
The first time, the first time you're probably not going to hit it at 100%.
Well, and especially for us creatives, it's all fuel for the fire to burn hotter, to burn longer, to be that rocket fuel that propels you. It's interesting. I don't know if you follow TikTok or not, but I learned about an artist that I had never heard before, but like I got drawn in by her story. Her name is Bonnie McKee. You ever heard about her? She had a hit a while back, but then she had a hit a while back and was going on tour to promote the record when the label exec called her and told her, I don't think it's a hit. And basically the plug got pulled on everything. And she didn't own the masters to her music. So when she parted ways with the label, like she just had all this music that she couldn't release. And she was just telling this story about how heartbroken she was, but she was determined to not let her get her down. But then TikTok gave it a second life because all of these fans of hers were like, but I really wish I could have heard this. I really wish I could have heard this. And she took last year apparently to re-record all of those as close to the original studio version as she could so that she could release it for the fans.
Taylor Swift strategy.
Exactly. And that's frustrating. A lot of people would let that stop them and be like, that was my big break and that was it. I guess I'm done. Nah, use it as fuel.
Well, the way the industry is, they try to tie you up, you know, the people don't get you as an artist to get out there, and you got to be careful with the contract, you know, because anytime you get into something, you don't realize that somebody actually, you know, put into a little legal line that they own the master. And then what does that mean? Well, that means they own your work. I mean, if you're a musician and you don't own the master, then you can't put the stuff out without them making the money. If you don't own it, they get all the money. So a lot of people don't realize that and don't check it out. And, you know, they take an advance, and the advance might seem like a lot, and it's not, you know, so it's not. It's always hard when you got to make sure you own your proprietary talent. Like if you're a business person, you want to probably get into, you know, patents and different copyrights and trademarks. And because if you don't, there's so many people out there will just, that's working, let me grab it because you didn't register it. And then
and some people will grab it even when you do register it. Like I've got friends that make online digital courses and everything is copyrighted and the logos are trademarked, and you'll still find people putting together these group buy groups that'll buy one copy and share it with hundreds of people. And like I understand it on an intellectual level because everybody wants a good deal and wants to save money. And also like are you talking out of both sides of your neck here? Because if you want artists to get paid for the art. And if the art is a course, pay for the course. And if the art is a book, pay for the book.
Yeah.
Like, walk the talk.
Yeah.
If you want to be a creator
Yeah.
out there getting paid to create, pay creators. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's the problem. We get this a Napster mentality.
Mhm.
You know, and there's a whole Napster, and people maybe don't know what that means. It's like there's a point where people think music should be free, but then it's like,
Yeah.
all the artists make money. No, they don't. It's just like the
Mhm.
film industry right now. All those
Yeah.
actors, they assume they were making money. Like the top tier make money. But in a
Mhm.
movie, how many actors are in a movie or a TV show, and how many of those people don't really make? They work day to day like anybody else.
Yeah.
They're living
And the
paycheck
same
to
thing with
paycheck like a lot of people. You know,
the same thing
if
with
you
the
don't pay them,
writers.
yeah, you're not going to get paid. And so people just think, oh, you're famous, you're getting money. It's like the money is not as big as you think, and so you
It
should
is not. No.
respect anybody who's a creator
Mhm.
and not steal their stuff. And it's stealing, you know. And I have strong beliefs about that. Being a musician is like, I don't think people should be stealing people's stuff.
I
I
don't
think if
think
you
they should either.
sample, you should pay for the sample. You should license the sample. You should license the cover song. You shouldn't be
Mhm.
using AI to take somebody's voice and put it on something else and then think that you can do
Nope.
that. It's like, no, you can't do
Yeah.
that.
I'm totally with you. And like the back asswards thinking in that whole situation where like some of the actors and some of the writers were showing the checks that they got for literal paper checks that were mailed to them, that were printed, that were
Mhm.
endorsed by somebody, that went through payroll and went into the think about all of the dollars adding up to send somebody a 3-cent check. The money
Yeah,
is
that's like what
there.
happens to
You're just
musicians.
spending it on stupid stuff.
Well,
Oh
the
gosh.
problem is when you give it all to the shareholders and the bondholders and the stockholders,
Mhm.
but they're not the ones doing the art. Like,
Yeah.
is the investor or the investment banker the one that
Mhm.
made the TV show?
Oh
Are they
yeah.
the one that wrote the TV show? Do you think the AI is gonna write all that? I don't think so.
Mhm.
Because 'Cause I've
No,
seen
no,
some of
no,
the
no.
stuff the AI produces, and it's not something you're
Oh,
gonna sit
same.
down and watch. It's not Seinfeld, it's not Sanford and Son, it's not anything you're gonna remember.
Oh,
Uh,
no, no. Most
you
of the
know?
time it's hot garbage. Most of the time it's hot garbage. It takes really like somebody that's already a genius to be able to engineer the kind of prompt that would churn out genius work. And by the time you have engineered the
Yeah,
prompt that would churn out the genius work for the AI, you probably just could have written the thing yourself. So, uh,
yeah. I mean, yeah, I just think that, yeah, that we're living in an age where people don't understand the value of people's hard work, and it's a
mhm.
multiple levels because there's a lot of people stealing people's stuff.
Yep.
And you know, I think people like if you think about it, if you're a life coach and somebody's like found a way to steal your program and is giving it
Mhm.
away for free on the dark web, or and just thinks they could do it, or even impersonating you and getting asking for people to pay them. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a big problem because you know it's not
Yes.
just, oh wow, I don't have any money, so I need to get it for free. It's like you got to start thinking about what's
Mhm.
going on here.
Yeah. And I don't know what the
But
answers are, but I know that we're on the verge of an unprecedented era of creativity, I think, because there are going to be a lot of people who use the AI to kind of
mhm,
masquerade as creatives, but they don't understand the pain that goes into that. And I'm not
the
saying
real,
that
the,
artists is suffering, but it's work, and it's for writers, it's
yeah,
staring at the blank page. For musicians, it's not being able to figure out that freaking how does that go? I can hear it in my head and I can't quite figure it out. Like,
mhm.
it's a struggle to get that out into the
Yeah, the
world, and
amount of
that's part of
work
what makes it.
hours
Yeah.
that go into, yeah, I mean, if you think, but the amount of hours that go into doing something creative, whether you're
Mhm.
creating a program or creating a business plan, or there's a lot of work that goes into it, and a lot of times you don't
Yes.
get paid for months and months or years. If you're writing a book, how long does it take you to write that book, and when do you finally get a check? You know,
Oh,
that takes
yes.
a long time. And the same
Yeah.
things with the, you know, musicians. Like we can spend hours and months and years putting something together, and then highly likely it won't make any money. And you
Mhm.
have to find other ways to make money by touring or licensing or selling merch, and you make more money from your
Mhm.
T-shirt than you do from your song. But
And
that's
I mean,
you know.
That's the heart of it. That's the heart of it right there. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You're asking about the book. It's taken me 5 years to write my book, right? When it goes out, is
Yeah.
it going to be an instant bestseller? Lord knows I hope, but we can't predict any of that. Like I said, my job is to create it and put it out into the world. And what the world does with it after that, I'll do my best to try and make it a bestseller. Can't guarantee any of that. Is it going to set me up for life like J.K. Rowling? Probably not. Is it going to be like the bulk of the writers and the actors on strike right now who are like, they're not making their money from this. They've got side jobs to support them while they're trying to make it big, right? And you said it perfectly. When you are a creative, it's all of these other revenue streams that you are having to create that actually make up the bulk of the support for your art, right? And when I got my master's degree, it's funny. I have a master's degree of entertainment industry management. I worked in LA. It was a specific creative hybrid business degree because there were the two factions in LA. That's what they were trying to bridge. The business people that were like, it's called show business, not show art. And then the artists going, you don't have a business without the freaking art. Like, so.
Yeah, disconnect. Well, yeah, there's always a disconnect where they think they can just, do so much AI. But the way I look at it is this, I'm a synthesist, and that means I use synthesizers. There was a time back in the 50s when Dr. Moog, who created Dr. Robert Moog, made the Moog. The musicians, the purists said, well, that's not real music because that's not an acoustic instrument. It's not a piano. It's not a guitar. It's not a cello. And so they didn't think it was real. And so it's kind of like, so you think about it, when anytime somebody uses some kind of tech to introduce something into music or art, people will go and say, that's not good. But the thing is, there's a way to use it.
Yeah.
Like there are ways to use AI that you can enhance your workflow or enhance what you're doing. Like for my sound editing, like as a recording engineer, I could go and have an AI say, I want to sound like Fleetwood Mac Rumors. Set a Neve board, a virtual Neve board, to give me the same compression ratios that were on that record for the vocals, for the bass, whatever. Ooh. Now that is a use of that's not actually just writing the song. It's actually helping me produce the song. So I don't have a problem using a tool that helps. But the problem is if I try to make it do 90% of my work as a creator, that's the problem. I don't think I should do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was actually thinking about that on a drive earlier because I was trying to figure out some sort of metaphor to explain that like people are confusing the tool for the art, and like getting a lathe for woodworking is not getting a cabinet, like those are two different things, and one is a tool to produce the other. And no matter how, I mean, I suppose there could be like AI lathes at some point in the future that create beautiful cabinets, but it's still just, it's the imperfection. It's the woodwork, the love and the struggle that you put into it, the artistry. Like, it's so much better when it's here.
There's still going to be room for hand-built stuff because maybe the components were built by a robot inside of it, but the outside of it has to have a certain design. And people tend to want something that was customized by an artisan, because they what you find today, even in the market, people get cars and then they customize their cars and trucks. Why? Because they don't like what just came out of Detroit. They go and they add stuff to make it uniquely them. So the individual wanting to stand out is still a driver. So people want that individual customization, and that's where human beings are always going to be involved in that, because I just think they have to be, the artisan type of effect, like you said, with cabinet woodworkers or people doing customized things, that's everywhere. People do that all the time for almost so many different things that people are into, that I don't think the AI and the robots will ever get that totally down. I think, they might help people in the process, but it's not going to take over.
Exactly. And there are going to be some people that love 3D printed furniture. Cool. There are people that love that. There are people that love IKEA, and then there are people that love that artisan stuff. There's something for everybody. Yeah,
I just think that, I think respect for artists and business people in that, the work you do, because some people just think you woke up and you just got your business, and they think it's like, oh, like how did that, you just woke up and you're just like, oh, you're like, Elon
Mhm.
Musk, and you're just amazing business plan off the bat, and you got Tesla, you got
Yep.
SpaceX, and you're just like, boom. And even
Mhm.
that story is not that story. You know,
Oh, I have
it took a
heard
long
that
time
all
for
the
him to
time.
actually get that.
Mhm. You know, one of the things that you can say, I mean, it doesn't quite piss me off because I don't give people that power over my mindset and my headspace, but, like, if you were gonna piss me off, tell me, that you think I'm lucky to be where I am. No,
Yeah.
I've made some really hard choices to be where I am and to achieve what I've achieved. I have made personal sacrifices. I have had relationships that didn't work out because I was going in one direction and they didn't like that I couldn't be, normal and a 9 to 5 person. And that's just not who I
Mm.
am. And it's okay. All of those things are okay. But I made those choices. Life didn't just drop permission to kick ass in my lap. That was a series of decisions and me following my own intuition. Like, I could have taken that conversation at the bar from back at the beginning and said, okay, that was cool. That was nice, but that was scary. Let's put that part back in, even though they leaned in and said that that
Mhm.
was awesome, because that was very uncomfortable and I didn't like that. And they might judge me, go back to being buttoned up. I could have done that. I didn't. And that made all the difference.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed when I talk to people who are entrepreneurs or creative people, or in the creative zone. It is that kind of fearlessness. At some point they get to a point where they're kind of
Hmm.
fed up with what's been going on, and they decide to, like, I might be scared of this, but I'm going to do it.
Yep. That was
And
exactly it. I was going to say, it's not fearlessness for me. It's that the mission or what I'm trying to do matters more than the fear. Cause I'm still terrified of most
well,
things that
more
I
than
try
fear.
to do, but it's because it's stepping out of the comfort zone, right? It's something I've never done before. So I have no idea how it's going to go. Therefore, scary. Right. And then the lizard brain
Yeah,
pops up and
yeah,
goes, don't do that. You'll die.
yeah. That's the thing, because we have a fight or flight kind of tendency to try to stay safe. And
Hmm.
if you're a creative, the thing is, like, you're gonna put yourself in the red a lot. A
Yep.
lot of times when you're creative, because, like, even if when you have something working as a creative, like with
Hmm.
musicians, we'll get something working. We'll get like a style working. Then when suddenly we come out and say, I'm not gonna do that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do something totally different, and the audience just drops. And you're like,
Yep.
well, I still feel like I need to do it. And you still do it, and then you go different paths. But that's
Yeah.
just the kind of nature, like, you're gonna try something because it's boring to just be the same. So the same
Yes.
person that broke through on one thing, they're not necessarily going to want to stick with that formula for the
Mhm.
next 30 years,
We're
because
not
it's
static
not going to
beings.
be satisfying to your heart and soul.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to me too, because, if you think about how the brain works, I know I think of people that I've encountered in my past and haven't spoken to recently as that, like, picture in time. This is who I knew you to be, and I don't know anything else about you now. So clearly you're still that person. I have to remind myself there's been, like 10 years, 20 years since I last spoke to that person. And they've done just as much journeying and growing and living as I've done. And odds are they aren't the same person as they were back then any more than I was. I'm the same person. I am a completely different person than I was when I knew them. So maybe give
Mhm.
people a little bit more grace. It's a side tangent.
Yeah, that's what I think happens is a lot of times people get they no, I think even if you get a business model, like, sometimes you get to a point where, like, well, I'm gonna do the new version of Coke,
Oh,
and
yeah.
nobody wants it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because it's like they think, "Oh, I gotta change it," and it's like, well, people want it back to what they knew. And,
Hmm.
that's why I think that there's a comfort in things, and people wanna know that you are the you they experienced. And so if you're somebody
Yes.
that's a business person and you create that widget, and they like widget from 78, and then they don't want any other widget than 1978 widget,
Hmm.
and then you say, well, no, here's the 2023, and, like, I don't want
Yep.
it.
Okay,
you
cool.
know
But maybe
you know
these people over here want the 2023 one and they don't want the 78
yeah.
one. So
Yeah, so
that's
you gotta
cool.
be willing to go to a different market.
Mhm.
That's the thing, is, like, are you willing to expand your market or shift your market and realize that you could go beyond,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, where you thought you were, and that's probably that's the hard thing. It's fearful because
Oh,
you
yes.
can like you mess with your metrics and you're like, oh, how am
Mm-hmm.
I going to meet the payroll?
Oh, I experienced this super, super recently on a couple of different levels. So at the end of 2020, I was a copywriter for a long time, as I mentioned, and I had been working running the marketing team, the copywriting team for basically like a celebrity business teacher. He's a big name, like he'd have these big 1,000-person events like Tony Robbins, that kind of person, and he's a fabulous guy. But by the end of 2020, we had hustled so hard, and that was the year that like internet courses really took off because we're all stuck at home and gotta do something, right? And the end of that year, I just went, I'm done. I never thought that I would reach this point, because when I started as a copywriter, I was so excited. I loved the puzzle of figuring out the market and the hook and the angle and the stories that we would tell and making this. And I only sell good stuff because I know that marketing can be used for sleazy purposes. So that's not what we're talking about here. But when I put my all into a product that I truly believe in, ooh, it got so magical, right? And at the end of 2020, I went, no, I'm done. I think I'm ready for something else. Let's burn it to the ground and do something else. And so I made the decision that I was going to go all in on my coaching business, Permission to Kick Ass, and start this podcast. And by that point, I'd been working on the book for a couple years. And so I made my plan, and I agonized over this for like 6 months, because sometimes it takes me a while to to pull the cord and do the thing. And the week that I turned in notice at this place where I was running the marketing team, my now former partner dropped a bombshell on me that he didn't think that he loved me the way that I loved him. And he moved out the next day. And so I went one day from like employed, planning this new business. We were in the process of buying a house, to like next day, no job, no boyfriend, no idea what I'm going to do in the future. And it like all fell apart in an instant. And I was totally blindsided by this. And I don't say any of that. Like, I've done a lot of healing and a lot of processing, but I don't say any of that to scare you or to make you feel sorry for me, but to say that like, even when you are coasting on cloud nine and everything's going really well, stuff happens to change your path, and you can either use it or you can get lost in it. My reaction to that was, well, first I got real sad, right? Because breakups suck. Then I got a little bit angry, because I was like, my future, the way that I envisioned it, got taken from me. What do I do next? Well, I'm going to flip a great big old bird to that. And I'm not going to do anything that you expect me to do. He had mentioned, hey, why don't you just do the easy thing and take over the lease? I was like, nope, I'm going to pack up everything I own and my cat, and I'm going to drive across the United States, and I'm going to figure out what feels like home, because I don't know what feels like home, but it's not Houston, so we're leaving. And he did one right before I left. He goes, I'm kind of jealous that you're getting to travel like this. I was like, not today, Satan. No, that ship has sailed. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple years. You know, the title of the show, we were talking about living life on your own terms. I had a lot of options, and I'm very grateful for that, because I know that a lot of people don't have options in a situation like that. They would have been stuck. I took the risk, and I didn't know how it was going to work out, and it did. And there was something really freeing about just deciding to do it and then trusting that I would figure it out along the way, and that I didn't need to spend forever planning. I just needed to get to that first place, which was New Orleans. I think you would love this too. Here's the synchronicity again, right? We're musicians talking on this show about all of this. I got to New Orleans thinking that I was probably going to go along the Gulf Coast into Florida, where I have a lot of friends. I got to New Orleans, and I loved the jazz scene so much that I decided to change and go to all the musical towns. I went up to Memphis. I went across to Nashville. Like, it was such a beautiful first year.
Well, you probably needed the journey. You probably needed to be around her, go around.
I did. And I gave myself permission, again, to just do whatever I wanted. But it still took me, like 6 months of processing, of trying new things, of repeatedly having to tell myself, don't just work your tail off on somebody else's couch. That's not what this whole trip is about. If you're not going to get out there and do things and try new things and meet people, what is even the point of this trip? And it took me about 6 months. I got to Asheville, North Carolina, and I really wanted to go to this outdoor spa. It's probably telling too much, but I think you'll dig it. There was an outdoor spa that had these like hot tubs that you could just sit
Mhm.
butt ass naked in the mountains, looking out into the forest with the fireflies. And they had like a building. It
Oh,
was a
that's cool.
three-sided building with a roof, and it was private still. But like, there was something when I saw that advertisement that went, "Yep, I want to sit naked in a hot tub on a mountain looking out at the fireflies at sunset. That's something I want to do." And I tried to convince one of my girlfriends to come out and go with me. And then I tried to search the recesses of my brain for, I needed something to give me permission to do this. I needed to celebrate. I needed a win. I needed a reason to go do this. And one day it just hit me. I don't need a reason. I want to.
Just do it.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to. And that just kind of changed the whole trajectory over the last couple years. It's been like, I want to, I'm going to. Okay, cool. We'll learn what we learned from this
That's like,
experience.
so that's the permission to kick ass.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So
That's interesting
I
because
didn't
I lived in
anticipate talking
Tokyo
about
and
that
there's
either.
some.
Go ahead.
I lived in Tokyo in 2004 to 2006, and they have these like
Mm.
mountain spring, hot spring like resorts you
Ooh,
can go to, and it's like a very interesting. The Japanese have a different spin on it, but
yeah.
just the whole Eastern philosophy of being in Japan kind of opened
Mhm,
my eyes. Because I lived in the West most of my life and 2 years in Tokyo, but that to me was something that I chose to go there because when I was 27, I had a cancer and I
mhm,
survived it.
mm,
And the pre-cancer me would have never gone anywhere like that.
mhm,
And post cancer, I was willing to do things the way now you see me as a podcaster. I would have never done that,
mm.
pre cancer. It kind of opened up my mindset where this kind of
Yeah.
this crucible moment happened in my life, and I decided I wasn't going to be held back by my own ceilings. That I was
Mhm,
putting like a self limiting, and it's like why
mhm,
not go and go travel? People say, oh, it was 2004. It's like, oh, it's dangerous to do air travel because 9/11 happened in 2001. They say,
mhm.
oh, my parents were like totally against it. I say, hey, I'm going because I survived cancer and I want to go to Tokyo and I love the Japanese culture.
Yeah.
I was really into it. I was doing a lot. I was reading a lot of things about Japan. I was into a lot of Japanese things. And so
Love
I'm going to
that.
go live there. And you know, you never know. When you have an opportunity, and you either going to be scared of it or you're going to just say, "Oh, I'm just going to do it." So it sounds like
Yeah.
I kind of went on my rounder.
I think that's awesome. And
Um,
like again,
but
synchronicity. I had a conversation on a different show with somebody earlier today, and he said something that really stuck out to me. And it was like most people have two lives. Hopefully I get this right. The ordinary one that they live, and then the one that they live when they realize they only have one. And that sounds like
mhm,
you and I both had that experience where it was like, I only have one, and I'm aware that I only have one. So I'm going to go live this thing and have the experience that I can have on this limited time on earth that I've got. I told you already that I'm scared of things, but to me, it's more important to
mhm,
push past the fear and go do these things. I went to Colombia several years ago, South America, Colombia. And oh my gosh,
mhm.
my mom was terrified of that. And she was sending me all of these stories about like people get kidnapped there and drugs and things like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
I kept going in my brain, but millions of people live there and millions of people travel there. So
yeah. So you should.
there's probably some dangerous stuff, but no more dangerous than any big city I've ever been in the United States, right? Like, don't flash your valuables, don't
Mhm.
talk trash at people you don't know, don't be oblivious. Go with a group of friends like common sense applies, right? But just go and trust that there are
Yeah.
good people and that the good people outweigh the bad people in any given space, outnumber in any given space, and have an adventure. And Colombia was
Amazing.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that sounds like something I wanted to go to other places, but I kind of came back into a routine. But it's still
Mm-hmm.
you get to do something like going to Tokyo like once in a lifetime, but to actually be there for like
Yes,
2 years. But
2 years.
the idea, yeah, 2 years is that's unbelievable. I still
Mm-hmm.
I have friends there, and I've always since the pandemic, it's been kind of hard to get back there because they've been
Mm-hmm.
having trouble there. In Asia, it's been a little harder with
Mm.
the pandemic, but hopefully one day I'll be able to get back there and do some things.
Yes,
But it's
awesome.
I just think it's interesting to have, goals that kind of scare you.
Mhm.
You know, and I think a lot of people they got that list, a bucket list, or they got this list. Oh, I wish I could do it. And it's like, well, who's stopping you?
Yeah.
You know, is this idea that you can give yourself permission once your mind's in the right state. Because a
Mhm.
lot of people, they're so like they're in this kind of state of not wanting to stay safe. The
Yeah.
thing is, like in today's, you got the fight or flight, and a lot of people are getting
Mhm.
hit with that. Like they're always thinking they got to flee or fight because they're getting
Mhm.
stressed. And it's not the tiger, it's not the wolf, but it's something in
No.
your mind that's triggering it to be the tiger or the wolf.
Mhm. Well, and it's interesting, and this is like it took me a long time to learn this because I'm from South Texas, and anytime anybody talked about like meditation or mindfulness, the way I was raised, it was hippy dippy BS. We didn't pay attention to any
Yeah.
of that. And thankfully, I'm grateful that I have lived all over this country at this point, and I've met people that opened my mind to this. I actually read this book that's called Meditation for the Fidgety Skeptic, because when I was falling
Oh,
into
cool.
mental states like that where I couldn't ramp down the anxiety. It was controlling my life and I couldn't do things. I knew that there had to be something that I was missing, and that's what finally opened my eyes to it. And so why I say all of this is like, yes, you're scared of that thing that you're trying to do. It totally makes sense. And when you get scared, your brain, exactly like you're saying, is dumping all of those chemicals exactly like you were being attacked by a tiger. It thinks that you are in danger. Sitting here on the couch just thinking about what you want to do when you are actually literally safe. So, if you can practice, if you can learn a little bit of mindfulness, mindfulness will help you separate the thoughts from the feelings and look at those from a detached place instead of just kind of letting them cascade down a hill with you and roll you into that snowball that rolls you over. Like, I didn't expect to talk about meditation tonight, but there we go.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people, living in a different culture, Eastern philosophy. I was already a Buddhist, so it made it
Mm-hmm.
easier. And I was practicing, before I went there, a Japanese form of Buddhism, and
Mm,
it just made it easier for me to understand the society. And I did notice
yes.
that some of my expat colleagues who didn't have that background had a harder time because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand. Like we're in the East, it's not the West.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
there's a different mindset, and your point of view coming from this Western point of view isn't the predominant view where you are. And there
Mm-hmm.
was like this zero situational awareness. It was trying to
Yeah.
force it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you're going to live there, if you're only staying there for a day or two, fine, you could do that. But if you're going to live there, you've got to
Mm-hmm.
understand where you have some situational awareness of like, where are you?
Yeah. And I
You
almost see
know?
it like building muscle too, because I remember so I majored in French in undergrad first for reasons I still don't understand because I grew up in Texas, as I said. But part of that was studying abroad. And one of the programs I went to Northern Quebec in this tiny little 98% French speaking town called Chicoutimi. And I gained so much respect for people who are bilingual, multilingual, polyglots, immigrants, because my brain used so much energy trying to think and speak in another language and trying to figure out how to adopt a different culture that by the end of the day, all I wanted to do was go back to speaking English because brain just couldn't. Like, can't think, have the dumb.
Mhm.
So I have so much respect for people that
But it's
that
hard.
travel and immerse themselves in other cultures because it's hard. It really is hard, especially English. It's the
Yeah.
hardest language. Oh, we're just going all over
Well,
the
the
map
problem
tonight.
is
I
like
love it.
in our society, yeah, it's just like this kind of this thing where you don't need to know it, other languages,
Hmm.
and you go to other places. And I was in downtown Tokyo and I was meeting people that could do 5 languages.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh,
I so want to do
I'm
that.
barely getting into Japanese. It's like, and to me, it was like, wow, to me, that's a real lack of capability in a global world
Hmm.
to be saddled with this mindset that somehow that your one language is you're fine. And then you see all
Hmm.
these people. I was meeting people from Australia and Europe and China and Korea, and they could do multiple languages.
Hmm.
And then I'm like,
It just
wow, that
It
that is a
literally
big problem
opens up the
because
worlds.
even as yeah, it was just a business situation where the people who had the ability could negotiate better. So I
Mhm.
started working on, with my sensei to get better, and to actually do
Nice.
my reports in Japanese to show respect, right? So
Mhm.
if I give my report in Japanese, it shows I'm giving some respect. And I started even that the little thing I did there, I got way better connections and communication and buy-in for
Yes.
the things I was doing because I was showing I was trying.
Yeah.
And
Most
people
people
who
just care
didn't
about you
try,
trying.
yeah, if the people didn't try, didn't, so I can't get these guys to agree. I was like, well, maybe you need to do the report in Japanese,
Mhm.
you know, because like you're living in Japan,
No kidding.
you know.
The first time I went to
But
France, I had a similar experience. Like, I was only a couple years in, and I was definitely garbling everything that I was trying to say, butchering it like that. I feel shamed of how I butchered the French language in the home of the French language. But I remember going to this shop once, and they automatically switched to English. Like, poor little dumb American girl, let me help you out here. And I threw a fit. Like, I went, I am never going to learn if nobody will speak to me in French. And the whole reason that I'm here is because I'm trying to learn it. Like, I lost it. And after I calmed down, we're going to speak very slowly and we're going to enunciate very clearly so that you can understand what we're saying in French. And we're going to show you where the local shop because you're paying too much as a tourist. Come with us. Like, just trying and not even being any good at it goes a long way toward creating these relationships.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Ooh.
relationships and storytelling, like do
Mhm.
you find as an entrepreneur being able to tell your story, kind of like the elevator pitch, to be able to communicate is like a core thing. It's like how are you going to get people to really embrace what you're doing if you don't know how to pitch your story, right? If you don't know
Oh,
how to
yeah.
tell, like, why should I come to you? Like, so that seems to be like the core, and it's like for everything. If you're a creator,
Mhm.
if you're a business owner, you're an author, you have to be able to kind of pitch your story and get people to buy into it, right?
Yes. And I think that's the thing that most people like gloss over or they haven't quite made that connection so they don't understand it. And here's why the arts are so important in a nutshell. Show is way more powerful than tell. I could tell you all day what my business does and who I help and who my perfect avatar is and what my offers are and blah, blah, blah. But if I don't show you why this is important, if I don't show you what I can help you achieve, I can't show you a transformation, I can't tell you a story about why you need to be doing this work, then nothing I said matters because it's already in one ear,
Mhm.
out the other, over the head. It hasn't connected. And that's why the art is important. Like you could picture the right story on a mental screen in your head, right? And you can put yourself into that story and understand it much better than if I tell you, well, I write emails for businesses. My words make you money. Boring.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. You do that kind of like the question is like why a podcast? Why do business people want to have a live podcast or a podcast where they're connecting with live customers
Mm-hmm.
rather than an infomercial? Because the
Yes.
infomercial is boring. It's
Mm-hmm.
scripted. It doesn't seem authentic. It's kind of fake. It's like, oh, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to go right by that. But if you actually have something that's like a live radio and you're talking to people, and this is
Yeah.
why I think the podcasting is booming because people are able to get across in an authentic way if they do it,
Mm-hmm.
the way we're talking about that actually will get people to pay attention, to
Mm-hmm.
get people to remember. I say, oh, this person said something really interesting. And then they want to hear from this person. They go check out there. They could click your link. They go follow you. They subscribe to you. They buy your course material. They join the masterclass because you
Yeah.
connected in a way that felt authentic.
Mm-hmm. And I could say that I felt a calling to become an entrepreneurial coach. And it's some of the most important work that you can do. It's just so I could tell you, or I could show you that I live for that magic spark in someone's eyes when they flipped from don't think I can to yeah, I think I can do this. There's just a
Mhm.
whole straightening that happens when someone hits that moment, and to be part of that transformation, that is why I became an entrepreneurial coach. Can you see the difference between showing and telling? The art is important.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, it's just like being able to, the art is, it's like communication. Like, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, why would you learn theater as a musician? Right. You
Mm-hmm.
could just sit there with your back to the audience playing great licks like Eddie Van Halen, right? You could not
Mm-hmm.
even face them. But if you learn to be like Lady Gaga or David Bowie
Yes.
or
Oh, the
Prince and you actually put
theatrics.
on a show, has
Prince.
nothing, the theatrics is what connects. It's all that
Mm-hmm.
theatrical stuff. It's the playing too. You got to be able to be a player, but the connection to the audience is the theatrical aspect. And as a musician, you could say it doesn't matter. That all it
Mm-hmm.
matters is I need to be an awesome player,
Mm-hmm.
and that's true. You certain guys, that's what they do. You get the
Mm-hmm.
Jeff. You get certain type of classic blues players. They won't do a lot of antics, and then you get a Hendrix. Well,
Yeah.
everybody remembers Hendrix because
Mm-hmm.
he did the pyrotechnic.
Yes.
He was an amazing player, but he had the theatrics. And so
Mm-hmm.
that to me, it still shows you that that carries through and
Oh
pushes you
yeah.
over.
Yeah, that's so full circle into what we were talking about, like putting yourself into the art and making it uniquely you. I once, when the blues band and I were on a hiatus, I decided I wanted to try something different. I auditioned for an 80s hair metal cover bands. I'm sure you can't imagine that in your wildest dreams. I landed the role and I was super excited because I don't know if you're familiar with the band Steel Panther, but they're a parody band
Oh
and they
yeah,
kind
I
of
know.
make fun.
Yeah, yeah,
The person
yeah,
who
yeah.
wrote the ad had used a picture of Steel Panther. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm ready to get out on stage with a really ridiculous big old wig and like zebra print pants. And we're rehearsing one day and we were
Mhm,
doing, I think it was Panama by Van Halen. And this lead guitarist, he stops me and he goes,
mhm.
"Oh, right there, that riff. David Lee Roth does it like this." And he like explicitly tries to say, "You should do it note for note." And I was
Mhm.
like, I'm pretty sure they're going to recognize that
So
I am not David Lee Roth. It's pretty obvious. Look at me. I'm not David Lee Roth. And he goes, "Well, people want to come to these things to hear their favorite music played like they hear on a record." I said, "No, live music is not for that. Listen to your records at
totally
home,
different
honey. This is a
interpretation. Yeah.
show. This is a show. And anybody that thinks that they're coming here to see Van Halen is going to be disappointed anyway, no matter how good we are. I want to play for the people who want live music, who want a show, who want entertainment." And we actually wound up parting ways because we just couldn't see eye to eye. And we later figured out he was an immigrant. He was from Peru. He did not realize that he had chosen a parody band in his ad. So we had already come at this from a misunderstanding.
Oh,
But yeah, we had to go our separate ways. I didn't.
misunderstanding.
I didn't front the hair metal band. It was very sad.
Well, we've had a great discussion tonight. I would love to
Yeah,
talk longer, but I do have another podcast coming up on an hour.
totally
But
get
I
it.
want people to check out your website, permissiontokickass.com, and maybe again tell people what they find when they get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I work with entrepreneurs to develop their confidence and their leadership and their communication skills. That's really the most important piece of business. We talk a lot about profits and we talk a lot about processes, but the people is the really important thing. And no matter how advanced the tech gets, the people are always going to be the most important thing. So, permission to kick ass for me, it looks like being the person that you were meant to be, leading the business that you were meant to lead, and that's what I help you do. So visit permissiontokickass.com, sign up for emails. I'll tell you when my book is coming out later this year. You'll get episode drops from my podcast, which I should have you on the podcast. I bet we would have an interesting conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where you'll find me.
yeah. I do show up on other people's podcasts from time to time.
Yeah, love it.
But thank you again for being on the Family Electric Ghost podcast, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. The landing page will be available for your audience tomorrow. So thank you for being a guest tonight.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much for having me.